Hey, Kayla, I think you actually need to use some crayons to make this thing really work.
I don't think
No?
you get, but okay.
No?
You just.
All right. Hey, Luke, I'm glad you're sitting down because today's a hard show for you. We're going to talk about something that impacts our lives every day. It invokes emotion, even times it gives us direction, and that is color. I remember growing up, when I had the old coloring box, I'm so old, I think we only had 8 crayons in there. Now we're up to a couple hundred. I get to see the vibrant colors and the difference. What do you see when you're looking at this box, Luke?
Well, yeah, JR, I'm colorblind. So when I look at that box, I just see it's very overwhelming to me. I like the 8 crayons because I can read the crayons and figure out which color is which. But yeah, when I look at that, it's very difficult for me to answer that question to you because you're asking me a question to explain color through your eyes when I've never seen color through your eyes.
Exactly.
So, but in my lifespan, a couple of technologies have advanced. One is there's apps out there now that are really powerful because then you guys can see side-by-side pictures of what you see and what I see. Now, when I look at those 2 photos, they're identical. But now to help me out, they've come out with these glasses that I can put on and I can look at a box of crayon like that and the colors just pop. And it's very overwhelming, it's sensory overload, but it's incredible to see what you're seeing because I've grown up never seen that color before.
I think it's going to be really eye-opening for our audience to get to see the differences and maybe looking at life through your lens today. It really brings me back to even a time where you and I were hanging out watching a football game and you couldn't tell who was on what team because the colors blended and looked very similar to you.
Yeah, I was cheering for interceptions and crying. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who I was rooting for.
It was one of the funnest games I've ever seen.
All right, with red and green, I've got something I'd like it to bring to your attention here. I'm thinking we could possibly paint a red wall and a green wall to give it something that we could look at and try to, again, understand the difference between your vision and mine.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought up red and green because there's 3 classifications of color blindness, and mine's considered red-green. So those are the 2 colors that I struggle with most. So, I put this on. Yeah, I mean, the colors they're great. It's like what I'm seeing Christmas for the first time. But yeah, if you want to paint them 2 colors, it'd be hard for me to tell which wall is which.
Okay. We'll
that's amazing. And think about this. In holiday seasons, there's always a certain color palette that people use, like in Halloween.
Right.
It's
We always
black,
have an association.
Orange. So it's kind of amazing. Now, Elizabeth and I have something. So Elizabeth, this is a value chart.
Right.
Everybody gets to see this when they're picking out colors, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Explain a value chart, and this is blue, but explain what we're seeing here.
Sure, this is our Sherwin-Williams paint deck, and there's about 1,500 colors here. Now, we're looking at some monochromatic colors. So we have blue here.
Okay.
We start with this dark blue. This is all the same color. We've just added more white as we go down
So that's
the chart.
what monochromatic means.
Monochromatic,
Okay.
yes. Now, here's an example of showing you what colors look good together. So they're all different colors, but it shows you good combinations. Now, Luke, take a look. What do you see?
Wow, yeah, it's just incredible how those colors do complement each other, where before they just kind of look like they blended. But
You're
man,
right.
this is starting to give me a little bit of a headache seeing all these
Don't
colors.
you have a different appreciation of what he is
sure
looking
do.
at?
Luke, I have one more thing that may give you a little bit more of a headache. This is the color wheel. Color wheel is a tool that we use all the time in decorating. I use one in my closet because it helps me put together clothing, what shirts fit with what and everything along those lines. But I can really see what ones complement each other, which ones are right next to each other. So if you're looking at this, what do you see?
Yeah, and I use that too because on my shirts I write what color it is, so then I can tell if it matches or not in my closet. But yeah, when I put these on, wow, I mean it's incredible. Like I said before, it is overwhelming, but it is also very strikingly beautiful.
Welcome to Between the Studs. We are Granite Ridge Builders, custom builders serving northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and also parts of southern Michigan. We have been building custom homes for almost 2 decades, and we're really passionate about what we do. So join us today as we explore the processes, the trends, and also tips that characterize today's new home. Thanks for watching.
Well, welcome back. I hope you found that interesting. Color blindness is something that does affect a lot of people. And Luke, could you kind of explain a little bit more about that? And here's the big question. Is it a hindrance for you in what you do?
Yeah. So you mentioned it does affect a lot of people. So there's 12% of men who have it, and about 0.4% of women. So chances are, who's ever watching this show knows somebody that's colorblind. And really what it boils down to is our eyes are made up of cones and rods. And I have less cones than you do. And it's something to do with chromosomes and how it's passed down. So typically skips a generation. So my grandfather was colorblind, and chances are one of my grandchildren will be colorblind.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you, Tony, you mentioned, is it a hindrance? It's interesting because I didn't find out I was colorblind until 6th grade. I just got through life with, reading the crayon colors and things of that nature. But our bodies adjust. So there's things that I learned very early on that color will deceive me. So I look for more patterns and breaking of patterns.
Wow.
And so, the Army picked up on this and said, you know what, people who are colorblind are capable of seeing camouflage things better than people who are not, because you guys go color first. It's interesting, if I ask any of you, hey, what house am I going out to? You'll say, go to the blue house. You always refer to something as a color. I never do that. Hey, go to the 2-story with, whatever it might be, the 3-car garage. I'll explain it something different than color. So our bodies adjust. And is it a hindrance? There are times where, I show up to work and I clash. But beyond that, it really isn't
I love
too much
this
of a
one.
hindrance.
You said that you can be a better gardener than I can.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, so again, you guys are all color-based first, so when I'm walking through a row of green beans, I see the shape of a green bean much quicker and I can grab it, whereas that green bean just blends in with the rest of the green.
Be careful.
garden, yeah.
Caleb's not going to be picking him now from now
Right,
on.
yes.
I think we can have him, Luke do it.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But when it comes really down to it, when it comes to the color, that is arguably one of the best perceptions that a human can have when it comes to it. Because you're talking about the deep blue ocean or the white sandy beaches. It just kind of helps put it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, the definition, Tony. Color is just described as one of the characteristics of how we as humans visually perceive objects, and we've assigned color categories and names like orange, red, yellow, blue, and purple.
Right.
Yeah.
And the science of color, or the study of color, is chromatics, the saturation of color.
When we look into the history of color, colors have changed and the meanings of colors have changed through time. When I had my children, when they were born, they had a pink and blue hat because they didn't know what type of child you were going to have usually beforehand. But before that, they used to have specifically pink for girls, blue for boys. But that's not the way it's always been. If you were to go back into the late 1800s and early 1900s, you would see that blue was actually a girl's color because they would say it's very soft and light, and that they would say that pink would be a little boy's color because red was the masculine color and pink was the lighter, younger version of red.
Well, as you can see, today's going to be a really exciting show, and it's definitely in my wheelhouse here. We're going to be talking about the color history, color theory, some great tips and trends when it comes to colors, so stay tuned because this is a really fun show.
This is going to be great. Okay, we got you the first one
So
started.
Luke, can you find the golf ball easier in the grass?
Color consideration's been around a long time. So today we thought we'd start with some of the basics. First of all, 40,000 years ago, people started doing cave paintings. It was super simple. They only had the color yellow maybe. So for about 50,000 years, they really didn't consider it. But then they started considering on color theory, didn't they?
Yeah, and in 350 BC, Aristotle started talking about the color with the visual impact with it. And he considered that there was only 2 primary colors, and that would be yellow and blue. And the way he got that was from things he was observing in nature. For example, the sun and the moon, male and female. And then he took it as far as assigning colors to the 4 elements: wind, fire, earth, and water.
So super basic. Well, in about 1480, Leonardo da Vinci, we've all heard of him, he started talking a little bit about the color theory also, and he started expanding some things.
Yeah, and then Sir Isaac Newton really took things to a new level. He started playing around with colors, and the way he figured this out was he put a white light, just a pure white light, through a prism, and on the other side of the prism, he noticed that you could see the colors of the rainbow. And when he did this, he figured out that there were primary colors when it came to light: green, red, blue. That's really easy to remember when it comes to light because GRB, Granite Ridge Builders,
Oh wait,
green,
I
red, blue.
like that one.
Yep. Then he started messing around with pigments.
Okay.
And that's where he became into, and he designed off of the Newtonian theory a color wheel. And this is an example of his first color wheel. And this is today's modern version of it. And that really has a lot of tools that we can use with this that go into how we deal with colors today.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's unpack the color wheel itself, but also pigments. And then Caleb, if you can kind of explain the color wheel, but pigments themselves. Again, they did not, or they had a hard time putting color with different types of pigments. There was only 3, okay? And they came up with red and blue, and in this case, yellow.
Yep, so that's what we were talking about. You mentioned the red, blue, and yellow. So those are the only ones that can't be mixed together. But then what happens when you do mix those together? Then that's going to be called the secondary colors. If you mix any of those together, when you mix red and yellow, you create orange. When you mix red and blue, you get purple. And then when you mix yellow and blue, you get green. So those are what we call the secondary colors.
Okay, so Then, after you do that, there's something called tertiary, so that's how we get our 12. What's
Yes.
tertiary mean?
So tertiary is going to be when you mix then the primary colors and the secondary colors together, and that gets you your 12. So if you're mixing the red and orange, you're getting red-orange, and you can do that all the way across the color wheel there. That gives you your 12 colors that you see on this wheel here.
Hey Tony, I have a really interesting stat about purple.
Okay.
Back to the pigments. Do you know back in the Greek and Roman days, the only way they could get purple is they had to get the mucus from 40,000 different snails.
Wait, snails?
Yeah, snails. And purple was considered the most luxurious color out there, but it was also extremely expensive, as you can see why.
So Kayla, now, what are the best colors to match, and how do we work on that?
So there's a couple of different ones that we can take a look at. There's complementary colors, which a lot of people will recognize this as far as like Christmas colors. Complementary means they're going to be across the way from each other on the color wheel.
So what would those
that's
two
going to
be?
be red and green, which is what you see for Christmas colors. Or you're going to see this a lot in team uniforms because the complementary color of blue is orange.
The Chicago Bears.
Yep,
Yeah.
there you
Oh,
go.
no wonder you like that.
Or violet and yellow are also the complementary colors of each other.
So they're across that wheel from each other, and they
Yes.
bring out the best color of the other one. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and then we have analogous colors. Those are going to be the ones next to each other on the color wheel, and that's going to be when we're talking about the 6, not necessarily the 12. So when we're talking the ones next to each other, red and orange are the analogous. So those are going to be going well together because they were made from each other, or the red made part of the orange, and so that's going to be how you can figure out the analogous.
This is fascinating. Now, I think we've got terms that you're going to talk about in a second, so you
Yes.
better start studying on terms, and we're going to go talk about that.
Kayla, in this segment, I think we're going to talk about something that viewers at home probably haven't heard a lot of or know a lot about, and that's the nomenclature. There's a lot of definitions and terms when it comes to color.
There really is. So let's start with the first one, and that is, what is the definition of color? Color is light reflected off of an object. We have a lot of colors here that we can see, but what does all of this mean? And when we're picking out things for a home, how does that so important? What this is called here is a value chart. Now, a value chart is going to be the hue of a color and the different lightness and darkness to that.
Yeah, when people are talking about the word color, they're really talking about a hue.
Correct.
Those 12 colors, and then we really just deviate from those 12.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about some other terms here that have to do with your deck, and that's tint, tone, and shade.
Exactly. So what tint is, if you look at the middle of the color value chart here, we're picking out a hue. And right now, let's say we have this on the hue of orange. When we're looking at a tint, you're going to be adding white to that orange color to make it a little bit lighter. That is what tint is. Now when we're talking shade, you're going to be adding black to get a little bit darker, and you can see that here. So now when we're going around the color deck here and going from color to color, we're going to be looking at the tone. So the tone is going to be when we're adding gray to a color. So from here, you can see all sorts of different orange colors that are a little bit of a different hue, and that's because we're adding gray to put a little bit more color in all of those.
And toning is the most difficult of those three to achieve because
Yes.
really you're adding black and white to that to get the gray.
Exactly.
So how does this all impact what you do every day? Really, what does the impact that color has, maybe the effects of a room?
Exactly. When we're talking about the effects of color, we're going to be looking at cool versus warm tones. We talk about this a lot in design, and how does it make us feel when we enter a room? Cool colors, you're going to be looking at one half of the color wheel. That's typically going to be your blues, probably some purples, and your greens. And then when you're looking at the warm colors, you're looking at the reds, oranges, and yellows. Now there's two colors that can be considered warm or cool. You can be considering warm or cool with purple. You can consider warm or cool with green. Now what this means is when you're talking about cool colors, you're going to be maybe a little bit more airy, a little bit more distant with those. When we're talking warm, kind of closes in the space, makes you feel a little bit more cozy.
And certain rooms may need either one of those in certain situations.
Exactly. If you have a really tall ceiling and you're feeling uncomfortable in it, you might like a warmer color to bring that ceiling down. If you're feeling a little claustrophobic in your room, you might be wanting to go towards those cool colors to open things up and provide a little bit more airiness to it.
So another thing we have to think about is how colors play off of each other. So another word we're going to talk about is juxtaposition.
Absolutely. Juxtaposition is when we're talking about what the color in relation to each other. So going from room to room, that's juxtaposition. If I'm standing in a kitchen looking in a nook and there's two different colors, the colors are next to each other, and that's how they relate to each other. When we're looking at that, it's very important. If you're going from one room to another and switching up those colors and very bold, they want to still go together. You want the same sort of theme going around a house.
And there's two terms that I always get confused: monotone versus monochromatic. What's the difference between those two?
So monotone, we're going to be taking a look at, this is actually a really popular trend right now, monotone is, because monotone is the same color when we're talking on two different objects. Monotone is the white walls and white trim work with this modern trend that's very popular. Monochromatic is a little different, and it's picking a hue, whether that be green, blue, or orange, picking a hue and doing the various tints, shades, and tones all in one space. So there's going to be a lot of different blues, a lot of different greens in one space is what monochromatic is.
And color impacts art, as you kind of defined as we were doing earlier in the segment. There's one specific type, pointillism, which started in the mid-1880s. It actually started and originated in Paris. Two main artists, George Seurat and Paul Signac, started this pointillism theory. So they were really combating impressionism, which was how the artist interpreted an object. Pointillism is very scientific. They take the three primary colors and they do specifically placed dots to create a large mural or painting, and the eye will then blend those dots together. What they found was by only using those three unmixed colors, your eye will blend them better, and that painting will be much more vivid than if we would manually blend those colors themselves. I love talking about pointillism.
Isn't it amazing the kind of understanding that they had to have of all this theory we just talked about to create those wonderful objects that we see?
There's a lot of history when it comes to paint. Now, Sherwin-Williams is the company that Granite Ridge Builders uses for our paint products, and they have a strong history. Sherwin-Williams first started back in 1866. Now, paint was a lot different back then. Now, in the 1870s, paint started to change, and that's because of Sherwin-Williams. Back then, you didn't have mixable paint, so you had to mix it on site. But Sherwin-Williams was the innovator when it comes to mixable paint and making it easier. They also invented the reclosable lid. So can you imagine not being able to use the same paint? So you'd have to get your painting done really quickly. Now, over the years, of course, it's developed into a huge company. They have over 3,000 stores, and they're a really great partner for Granite Ridge Builders.
When you think about the allure and the appeal of paint, oftentimes the name can be something that's a big part of that. And so I've often wondered, is it the paint color that they come up with first and then they name it, or do they come up with a name and then decide to find a paint for it? Well, the truth seems to be that there's a little bit of both. The one that came to mind as I was doing this research was Mizzle.
Mizzle.
Mizzle is a mix of misty and drizzle, and it's supposed to reflect that kind of day. It is a gray, hazy sort of green. And so it's a wonderful method, and so sometimes they'll find a very creative name, then they'll wait to name it, or vice versa.
And they have over 1,500 colors, so think of all the names. And a name can really make or break the color, so it could be a great color, but if the name isn't appealing, it might not be a big seller. Now, when we think of color in our homes, there's a lot of popular colors, and we've talked about color is so important because it impacts your emotions, also your curb appeal, so it can add to the value. Some of the popular exterior colors we're seeing today, of course, are the smoky grays and the blues, a lot of the mossy greens, the smoky red. Now, what I found out, one of the most popular exterior colors is, you won't believe this, Tony taupe. So I don't know if Sherwin-Williams developed it because of our Tony, but Tony taupe is one of the most popular.
And when you're trying to do these choices, there are some great tools that you can use to your advantage as well. And one of them is the Sherwin-Williams Color Snap app. And with this, you can take a picture of your room or your exterior of your house, and you can touch it, use different colors, and apply it to there so that you can see what it would look like from afar and really help you make those kind of decisions with something to look at.
Color is such an important factor when it comes to our human emotions. So we're going to talk about a few different colors that affect that. Now, when it comes to your home, it's very important what you select to put in your home because it could reduce your stress, calm you down, give you peace. So color is very important in our everyday life.
And all of those words that she just described there is blue. Blue is a color that's supposed to bring you calmness, peacefulness, tranquility. If you think back to that time when you just maybe get off the plane and you go right to the ocean and you see it for the first time with those calm blue waters and the blue sky, you immediately just feel the stress go away from you, and a lot of that's the color blue.
There was a time, Tony, when all the school walls were actually painted in white and orange. They changed those to blue for that same reason.
Right.
It would actually reduce the children's blood pressure, and they were able to focus more and increase their learning.
Well, I think maybe I should do blue in all of the Granite Ridge offices from now if that works out well.
One of my favorite things of the color blue is that you can count the number of blue cars in society, and it's supposed to tell you how we feel about our future. The more optimistic we are about the future, the more blue cars you might see on the road.
So what you're saying is tell the audience to buy blue cars.
Yes.
Now, if you're looking for a color that goes well with blue, orange is that complementary color that we talked about before.
Yeah, Kayla, in fashion, we use all these colors, but blue specifically, blue is actually the #1 selling women's sweater, and the reason is that women think it's men's favorite color, and they're right, it is, so it makes sense.
Now there's one place they say not to use blue. They say in your kitchen, don't paint your walls blue or have blue plates because it suppresses your appetite. I don't know, I'd argue that maybe I need my kitchen to be blue.
And JR, I know you and your wife both like art history. Well, one thing that's very interesting is, especially back in the early 1500s or so, everything was painted, right? Well, here's an interesting fact. Virgin Mary was always painted in a blue cloak because they thought that, the Catholics especially thought that Mary was the way to heaven, so you'd always see her there. And I'll bet you didn't know this one. Mary, at that point in time, all the way up into the 1500s, her hair was red. And then Germany kind of took over on a lot of the Impressionist type of paintings. They started painting her blonde.
Red is a wonderful color. It's the color of passion. It's the color of intensity, healing. Lots of things are associated with red. Everyone should have at least one pair of red shoes, if you ask me. But the thing that comes to mind when I think of red is definitely the Arrest Me Red car. I never got as many tickets as I did when I had my red car. That's personal testimony. But it's definitely, it's an attention-getting color, and it does so very well, and in colors, and with cars or with clothing too. I think about the Lady in Red, another wonderful song. So red is a very wonderful color.
You know, red is very much attention-getting, and that's why it was one of the most popular colors when it came to front door colors. Here you see a lot of red front doors, or a lot of people like to paint their kitchens red because it increases your appetite and it's very inviting when it comes to food.
Yeah, a lot of restaurants pick up on that too, the same way the red is very stimulating. It's also a color that a lot of folks, time passes and they don't know it. So you'll see bars, casinos, a lot of places where they're trying to get you, keep you there for a long period of time, will use that red.
Yeah.
Red is very strong and dominating, so it's a color in your home you might not want to use a lot of. You might want to use it on accent pieces or an accent wall. But when it comes to marketing, red is a striking color to use.
It is, and that red also goes into things like sporting teams, like the Detroit Red Wings, the Boston Red Sox. You know, they're trying to get that emotion going. And then there is the world's biggest misnomer, and that is the bullfighting.
Okay.
Bullfighting, they always have the big red carpet out there, the big red towel to drape around to get the bull all going and excited. Bull's colorblind.
But it's really interesting. We talked about blue being the favorite color of men and women, right? Did you know that red is the most favorite color of children? Think of this. Red is also a Cupid, the devil. So there's a big array of what red can evoke and the emotion, and just in the house, where you put it, red is huge.
So I love that we get to talk about yellow next, because yellow is fun and yellow is happy. Yellow creates a really joyful emotion a lot of times. Yellow's been a great color recently in the latest trends, going with the grays and blues. You see a lot of yellow around in interior design. Yellow also means knowledge and wisdom. There's a lot of great associations when it comes to yellow.
Yellow can be found in music and media as well, from Yellow Brick Road or The Wizard of Oz to Yellow Submarine to all kinds of things. There's lots of yellow in the music and media that we watch and listen to.
Yeah, we often think that the color yellow means caution. We see it a lot in traffic signs, but it's actually one of the most popular colors to sell a house. So a lot of real estate logos will incorporate yellow into the design. What I also like about yellow, it can mean temporariness. So you'll see it associated a lot with taxi cab, rental car companies, but you'll never see it associated with banks because they're permanent structure foundations that are solid.
And I've got a tip. You maybe don't want to paint your baby's room in yellow because they found that babies are more temperamental and cry more in a yellow room.
That's true. I did it. I didn't mean it. But it happened.
So you might want to repaint. I'd also say that yellow is by far one of those colors that people either love it or hate it.
Yeah, it's really true. And speaking of your taxi cabs, you know why they went to yellow at first? Well, there was a study by the university in Chicago a long time ago, and they put all the cars with their colors as far away as they could, and they said, which one could you see the farthest away? And that was the color yellow. So a lot of vehicles started painting yellow because it is something you see and you can get a clear understanding that that car or vehicle is traveling or coming to you.
And we're going to continue on with the whole topic of the cars, and really goes on to the roadways itself. There are so many different signs out there that are there to grab your attention, to make sure that you are aware of what's going on, like deer crossing signs, people walking across the street. You see them a lot with the new path that we have going through all of Allen County, where they have the new signs up that are also flashing yellow whenever anyone is coming up to one of the major intersections on DuPont or on Gump.
And in our subdivisions that we're putting in now, the new ones, you're going to see a lot of great big Caterpillar equipment, things like that moving dirt.
Oh, yeah.
So you'll see that, and that's why yellow is something that you really do notice. We just got done talking about the three probably most powerful colors, but there's a lot of other ones, and we love talking about the emotional and psychological meaning of these. We're running out of time, so we're just going to pick one of our favorites and tell you what we think about those. For instance, I'll start with purple. Love purple. It's rich, it's royal, regal, and it's also a very calming color.
Another calming color is brown. Brown is used a lot with marriage counselors. It's used as a color to help people open up more and to talk more about themselves. Calming color is also orange, and you'll see orange in a lot of logos like Nickelodeon. You'll also see it to show some passion in Harley Davidson motorcycles, and Amazon uses it as their big smile between the A and the Z, showing that Amazon has everything from A to Z.
Well, I like pink, obviously, and I think I wear it well. But pink is a color that tends to encourage people to spend a little bit more money. So people who are offering personal and professional services often will wear a pink uniform, which encourages people to trust them and maybe pay a little bit more for their services. And strangely, to me, is the fact that men find the color pink is something that they trust for products, but they don't want to be seen purchasing something pink. So if they think people are watching, they won't buy something pink, they'll buy something brown or blue.
Well, another color to talk about, or lack thereof color, would be white. And white's been a really popular color lately for exterior of homes, interior of homes. It was the color of the year for Sherwin-Williams. White represents joy and innocence. It represents purity and cleanliness. So it's a really nice color to really open up for your home.
And kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum, go away from white is going to black. It's another one of those colors that doesn't contain any hue, but it's a color we use every day. It can represent strength, it can represent sophistication, can also represent evil and death, but it also can represent power, and that's why a lot of the judges wear black robes.
Green is another popular color. It represents restfulness and friendliness. Green is a great color because we think of nature. We think of grass and trees and plants, so it's a very calming color.
I hope you found this interesting. I know we really enjoyed studying on this. Would you go ahead and close for us, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. As always, guys, we want to thank you for spending part of your day with us. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do so well, please just pick up the phone, give us a call, visit the website below, or follow us on any of our social media platforms. Even better yet, guys, come in any one of our front doors at our model home or our office so we can talk about how to incorporate color into your new custom home.
Let's just start with, what's the definition of color?
Yeah, why don't you define that for us? Ooh, I thought you
thought
were going to do it.
Oh yeah, I was. Okay,
Yep,
sorry.
thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Let's do this again.
A lot of innovation when it comes to Sherwin-Williams and their paint.
We owe a lot to them. And one of the things that
We owe a lot to them.
Let's start over.
Okay.